only positive effects: God and Infinity. An Amanita Muscaria trip report by Jason G. Posted to earwid.org, October 17th, 2021. I ate 2 of these things, and didn't die. When I Google image search most dangerous mushroom, the Amanita Muscaria, or fly agaric, fills the screen. After lots of research and reading books about this mushroom, together with my friend Haim, we each ate 2 of them, raw and freshly picked from the forest. After eating the mushrooms, we fell asleep pleasantly, and gradually, within 30 minutes on the sunny grass, naked and covered with a tarp, me, and in a sleeping bag, Haim. If we did it again, we would both like to have a prepared, cosy, shady spot to relax and sleep next time. During my dreams, the mushroom communicated clearly and in English with me that it was not dangerous. It is a tool to heal on all levels that can be used as often as I like, and to not be afraid. It was a very peaceful sleep. Haim's mushroom communicated to him that sometimes you need to let things go that are holding you back, and to take action immediately when you feel it. So, when he awoke, he vomited up some mushroom and things he didn't need. I didn't vomit or feel sick at any time, but before sleeping I felt a strong urge to defecate, and so I did. Upon awakening and after Haim vomiting, we both felt amazing and started to do exercises because we felt so light. At this point, we both urinated again and drank it immediately, as our body should have alchemized the mushroom for us by now. We decided to pack our things and start hiking again, and now this feeling of lightness was increased substantially. Not only was I light and agile on mental, physical and emotional levels, but intentions for the moment were incredibly clear. It was as if all my bodily senses, hot, cold, hungry, noise and visual distractions, etc., had their volume knobs turned to 1, and my present moment, well-defined intention, was turned up to 12. Although I would consciously choose to put my attention on my senses, they did not control my choices or distract me significantly. All that mattered to me is what I wanted to do in that moment, and I was completely focused and in the flow state, no matter what. This state was pure bliss, and the mind was perfectly clear, essentially the opposite of ADHD. I was happy to get a glimpse of how reality can be experienced in that state, which was honestly a first for me. It was a very happy moment for me to realise that that state was possible to experience, and I am using it as a reference experience now to align myself in everyday life. Our bags didn't feel heavy at all. Our footsteps were floating, and we started walking down the valley, with the intention of returning home to a small town in Switzerland. Sometimes I also felt a bit uncoordinated, lackadaisical, and not perfectly balanced and focused on my body at times, walking left and right for a couple of seconds and then taking my awareness back into my body before recovering posture and balance. We continued walking down the valley, hitchhiking cars and enjoying being in the moment in the flow state. A van stopped with an older German couple, and we let them know about our mission of finding and eating the fly agaric. They told us that we would die if we ate it, and we told them we feel great and aufgeputscht. They were very nice, and we shared some conversation about their home state, and they dropped us in a town. We got another ride from a man who loved running. I asked if there's any question that he has that he would like an answer to, and he spoke of his mother's health diagnosis, which then led into a discussion of how he thinks all this plandemic craziness is totally illogical, and what steps he's taking to maintain his freedom with his friends. We enjoyed each other's company a lot, and he dropped us off at the spot we began our journey from, only on the other side. At this point, it was about 3 hours after we had taken the mushrooms, and an hour since we drank our urine, and our consciousness and level of awareness was totally shifted. I experienced Haim's reality as if it was my own, and it seemed our voices and beings were one. It was as if I was speaking from both of our viewpoints, and there was no separation or difference between the two of us as to who was perceiving and experiencing reality. As I sat next to and looked at Haim, I observed myself viewing from his viewpoint. He experienced all the same, and it was as if both of our experiences were simultaneously experienced by both, thus making both just one in the end. I saw Haim's avatar as one in an infinite grid of other beings, all connected in the same way. When we spoke with others, it was with heightened clarity, and our intentions were pure and loving. People responded fantastically and happily to us, mirroring our state. Once we enjoyed our environment and felt like moving on, I decided to hitchhike at the road again. Within 10 seconds, a car had stopped and said they were going to our exact destination. Of course. We arrived, got out of the car, and started walking. I began to perceive everything, infinity, and the looping, perfect circle nature of the universe. I saw in my vision an infinite number of screens, each one frame after another of the same lifetime. For every moment in life, there are an infinite number of alternative, spontaneous decisions to be made by everything and everyone, and each separate decision creates its own entire timeline and infinite number of offshoots. The universe is limitless, and all possibilities have already happened, are happening, and will happen. I was watching the universe and all the possible timelines from a zoomed-out perspective. I was able to perceive the greatness and unity of it all from the Creator's perspective. I felt myself experiencing pleasurable body sensations, breathing, taking in visual beauty with my eyes, and pleasant noises. Then a few seconds later, I would experience shortness of breath and unpleasant vision and noises, and then the feeling of internal pain, and tripping on a rock and hurting myself, all within a few seconds. I wasn't directly experiencing it as my physical body or avatar, and I wasn't actually hurt. All the sensations lasted for less than a second. It was more like a sampler plate of experiences that was being shown, to indicate that they are all part of the same life and are equally valuable. I was being taken on a tour of the universe, infinity, the looping nature of life, and what the human experience is made from. After many such incredibly beautiful visions that seemed to overlay and occupy my entire visual field, surely not fully conscious of everything around me that I would be normally conscious of when sober, my consciousness zoomed with a magical whooshing sound back into my body on Earth, and I found myself walking alone without Haim at sunset, about 2 hours after my last memory together with him. All I remembered was walking with him near another lake. Then I regained consciousness next to my current location again. I had no memory of how I got there, but I was already walking when I regained consciousness. I wasn't sure if I was in the same reality as before, as I just experienced and explored many different timelines. Did people still speak English and French, I wondered. I walked into a bar, gave everyone a bonjour, and luckily they seemed to all speak French. I wished them a good evening and started walking again, wondering where Haim was and how to find him. I thought he might have gone back to my apartment, so I walked home. I was still unsure if I was in another reality where someone else was renting my apartment, so when I successfully entered and it was our stuff, it was a relief. I didn't find Haim in the apartment, so I decided to sleep and wait for him. I woke up at 5 AM the next morning, still dark outside, and decided to go outside to find him. We had slept 2 nights ago directly on the moss in a beautiful forest meadow close by, and my intuition told me he might be there again. I walked for 30 minutes and arrived at the meadow but saw nothing. I called out Haim's name, expecting nothing, and was shocked and relieved to hear, "Jason!" All the stuff, my back, and Haim was there, healthy and just fine. I asked him what happened to me after my memory ended near the lake, and apparently I was responding and speaking still after that point, but eventually we were only communicating telepathically. Or at least, Haim was trying to do so. In an attempt to pick up on what he thought was my telepathic communication, Haim laid down in the nearby meadow and closed his eyes. I kept on letting go of my backpack and dropping it on the ground as if I didn't need it, and I walked off alone. Then, we both had our own solo experiences and met afterwards. The main learnings and takeaway from the experience are these. If I consumed this mushroom again, I would always have an experienced trip sitter in a controlled environment to stay safe, especially with higher doses like mine, where I was having out-of-body experiences for hours at a time, but apparently still walking around and interacting with the world. The mushroom has had no negative effects or after effects on me so far. The light and pleasant, focused feeling on all levels has remained to a lesser degree, even 3 days afterwards. I feel more connected to myself and the rest of the world, and shed a lot of fear after experiencing the nature of our reality. There is always free will, meaning you can always make a choice. That is your birthright. Love is God, and God is love. And whatever seems to be happening, the underlying truth is always love, and its inevitable consequence will always be love as well. There is a lot that needs to be experienced to be understood, especially when it comes to this mushroom. And finally, if I want to live a life of a certain essence, I need to consciously take action and let go of anything that is not part of that essence. Only then will it manifest. Phase analysis. Timeline of the mushroom's effects. First phase. After consumption of raw, fresh, 1 day old after picked, kept outside in paper bag, Amanita Muscaria mushrooms, a gentle, gradual sleepiness occurs within 30 minutes. Seemingly no matter the time of the day. We became tired at 12 noon after a restful night's sleep, and no tiredness at all before taking the mushrooms. A 2-hour plus nap with visions, and the mushroom clearly communicating. Second phase. Woke up after 2-hour nap with a feeling of effortless weightlessness in the physical, emotional and mental bodies. Buzzing joy for no reason. Desire to use the body, work out, run, walk, hike, breathe, do yoga. Until now, no urine has been consumed after consuming the mushrooms. At this point, we peed out around 300 to 400 milliliters and drank it immediately before starting to hike. Third phase. Within 30 minutes of drinking our urine, the weight of our backpacks and bodies became meaningless, and I felt like I was no longer controlled and a slave to my bodily sensations, but I was controlling it externally, and it was a tool to be in and accomplish whatever I liked. Bodily needs and sensations became less prominent and urgent, as if their volume knobs were turned down to 1. If I chose to, I could focus on my level of hunger, thirst, warmth, cold, discomfort, comfort, pain, or any other sensation, but none of them could steal my attention from my top priority and focus, which is my intention for the present moment, of which the volume knob was turned permanently to 12, while all the possible distractions were turned to 1. It was as if I had a vibrating, prompting text box at the top of my vision, asking, "What is your intention?" And I was fully engaged with whatever I chose to put my focus on. I was zigzagging a little bit occasionally as I walked and wasn't focusing on my path fully. Fourth phase. About 1 hour after we drank our urine, I felt a feeling of connection and telepathy with everything and everyone, and began to see the underworkings of our universe. I experienced other people's experiences simultaneously with my own, still being conscious of my avatar and all its senses. It felt like the ultimate playground, and I felt immense gratitude for having chosen to inhabit my body in this time and place. And I was sure that I am an infinite soul that has chosen this particular experience. All is one. Interesting note. Our pupils were not dilated at all in this state, and perhaps even more narrow than normal. Fifth phase. About 90 minutes after drinking our urine, I started having visions of infinity, unity, the nature, inherent beauty, humour of our universe, all possibilities happening infinitely and simultaneously, and all different possible layers of our human experience and the experience of all beings and things. Important. I was not aware of my physical body and where I was walking, and during this entire phase I was indeed walking and interacting with the world, but not conscious of it. This entire fifth phase period was a blackout period for my awareness of my actual physical body on Earth, before I entered my human body and consciousness again in the sixth phase. Sixth phase. About 3.5 hours after drinking our urine, with a deep and whimsical whooshing and jingling noise inside my head, my consciousness came back to my human body as I was walking along a lakeside. It was as if I just hit restore save game in a video game, and I instantly teleported to that moment. I had no memory of anything even seconds earlier, and the earliest memory I had, judging by the sun, was around 2 hours ago walking together with Haim, my trip partner. In between, I had no memory, and I was now alone and without my backpack. In retrospect, this period of time was taken up by my fifth phase visions, but when I regained consciousness I didn't realise that those visions were inside time and didn't remember them. It felt more like a blackout. This was disconcerting because I didn't know what happened. and I was slightly worried about Haim, and I wasn't sure if the reality I was in now was the same one I started in. I wondered if people still spoke French and English, and even if my apartment was still mine or had someone else occupying it. Luckily, I was still in the same universe or timeline, and we found each other again. I was still feeling the same abilities and in the same state as the third phase. I fell asleep for a few hours, dreamt very vividly, and woke up a few hours later. Seventh phase. After waking up from a short nap, 9 to 10 hours after drinking our urine, the sensations from the third phase were about 50% intensity, although still very pleasant. Eighth phase. 12 to 16 hours in, the effects are mostly gone, with clear memory and awareness of that heightened and focused flow state that I plan on referencing every day to get closer and closer to it in my natural state with no external substances. Summary. This mushroom must be extensively researched, 100% properly identified, and read about by the person eating it before deciding to take it or not, as anyone could have a very bad experience if they are not prepared for what it has to offer, or even take the wrong mushroom. Expectation management is key, and everyone is responsible for their own life, health, and choices. So let's address the elephant in the room that made an infamous appearance in my 10-gram mushroom trip report video, still one of my most popular videos on the channel, where in that one as well, the person consumed mushrooms and then after the fact drank their own urine to sort of basically recycle the psilocybin in that case, or the muscimol in this case, to basically get an even more potent experience. And it actually goes quite a ways back to, I believe, Siberia, where there was basically reindeer urine collectors, that this is just conjecture, but I'd imagine they realised that the reindeers would eat the Amanita Muscaria and then they'd end up urinating it out, and thought, okay, maybe this might be a safer way to consume Amanita, because obviously Amanitas can be quite dangerous. You need to be very, very careful with these substances, the fresh actual fly agaric mushrooms. I've covered many reports where people have quite toxic experiences, even to the point of being hospitalised. It's not something to be messed with at all. So in a sense, you definitely can do this if you want. And apparently back in the day they actually saw the reindeers drink each other's urine and continue to trip well past the amount of time you trip from eating it. So it's definitely something you can do if you want. Probably reserved to the most serious of trippers. To each their own, really, I think. I know a lot of people probably listen to this and are maybe quite squeamish about the thought of urophagia, which is the actual technical term for drinking urine. But it's definitely possible to do. And in a sense, as disgusting as it might seem to many people, it very much is a safer way for humans to get the effects of the muscimol, the chemical in Amanita Muscaria. Apparently, urinating out the muscimol filters most of the toxins from the Amanita, and so it is a purer way to actually do that, and it definitely seemed to work out for these two fellas. They had a seriously spiritual experience, some really interesting effects here. I didn't know that you could experience telepathy on Amanita, although I guess I'm not surprised. As you get deeper into psychedelics, especially when you're with another person, it seems like this is just figurative language. Don't actually know what I'm on about, really, but this is what it feels like to me, because I've said many times I've actually experienced telepathy before, and my very first breakthrough, ego death, awakening experience, whatever you want to call it, which I featured on my compilation of personal trip reports, the video before this one, if you want to check it out. It's the Brink of Insanity trip report, yeah, I believe so. And me and my mate Bookers basically it's like we were both resonating on the same frequency. Again, it's figurative language. This is how I perceive it, and try to articulate this ineffable experience. So we're both on psychedelics, and we both smoke weed at the same time, and we're also just energetically speaking to each other, connecting just on a material level, both in tune, completely pure friendship going on between us. It really beautiful. And then as we're consciousness is raising through becoming more conscious through the effects of the psychedelic, and also talking deep about life, and just connecting really on a mindful level, we start to realize that we're actually not opening our mouths and are talking through each other. And then this was really what triggered the dissolution of self, and what really spurred on the ego death in a sense. And interestingly, it was like I broke my ego, but his was still there. And then the telepathy ended, and then he just like ran out the room, because obviously it must have freaked him the fuck out. Don't blame the poor lad. It was crazy. I started crying, and then I pissed myself. I didn't drink my own urine though to get the effects of the LSD back into my system. I was too far gone for that, and I don't think that's my sort of vibe to begin with. But yeah, just a little addendum to say here that I've actually experienced telepathy myself, so I'm not surprised that you could experience it on Amanita's. These two friends seemed extremely close together. So I wouldn't be surprised that they were both radiating the same frequency, and it allowed them to operate on the exact same wavelength to sort of merge minds. I don't know how it works. I don't know how it works at all. This is just language to try and explain something beyond material human understanding. But yeah, just it's quite interesting, isn't it, I guess? Apparently the Koryak people of Siberia, who couldn't afford the hallucinogenic amanitas, would drink the urine of tribesmen who would experience its effects for it. So it's definitely a tradition that's lasted throughout time, up until the modern day on Erowid, by two lovely Swiss lads. So yeah, rather interesting. Even if it might be a bit gross to many people, it's something that is actually practiced in these traditions, in the shamanic ancient cultures, and in the modern psychonaut culture of the 21st century. Like I say, to each their own. Fair enough. Everyone gets the kicks out of the psychedelic experience their own way. If you're a serious tripper, it probably makes a lot of sense for you to do it, because in a technical sense it is probably the purest way to actually consume this without risking any toxic side effects. Although it must be said that these two did eat one guy ate them, didn't he, at the beginning, and ended up vomiting, and the other guy was like, oh, I need to defecate. So in a sense, it does have it's quite taxing on your system when you actually eat the body of the shroom. And then they were obviously like, okay, let's crank things up a notch and get that piss drank. Oh, interesting. Yeah, it's funny because, on the 10-gram mushroom trip report, Facing Insanity, like the majority of comments I get on that nowadays, I open up my phone and look at my YouTube studio, and like 90% of the comments are like, wait, this guy drank his urine? That's totally clapped. Oh yeah, it must be quite shocking for people who don't know about it. I didn't know about that specifically until that trip report, but it made complete sense to me why they would do that. It just made sense that they were recycling it to get a longer, more potent trip. But yeah, again, I can't say I would be doing that anytime soon or in this lifetime. Maybe in another one. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this Amanita report, and I'll see you on the other side.